Let's start with the Home Equity Line of Credit, or HELOC. A HELOC is essentially a line of credit that uses your home as collateral. It offers a flexible borrowing solution where you are approved for a certain credit limit, but you only borrow what you need. You can borrow, repay, and borrow again over a specified draw period, usually around 10 years. The key advantage of an HELOC is flexibility, especially if you are unsure how much money you will need or if you plan to access the funds over time. You are only required to pay interest on the amount you have borrowed, which can help keep your payments lower in the short term. However, HELOCs typically have variable interest rates, which means the interest rate can fluctuate over time, and if rates go up, so will your monthly payments. Additionally, HELOCs tend to have low upfront costs, but be mindful of annual fees, transaction fees, or minimum draw requirements, which can add up over time. Now, let's look at home equity loans. Home equity loans are different because they offer you a lump sum of money up front. Once you receive the loan, you start making monthly payments, typically with a fixed interest rate. This means your payments remain the same for the entire duration of the loan, which can be beneficial if you prefer predictable payments. Since the interest rate is fixed, you will always know exactly what your monthly payment will be, no matter how long you have the loan. This stability is great for those who need a specific amount of money and want to budget without the uncertainty of changing interest rates. However, the downside is that, unlike a HELOC, you don't have the flexibility to borrow additional funds if unexpected expenses come up. Also, you will need to pay interest on the entire lump sum immediately, which means your payments will be higher than those on an HELOC, especially if you don't need all the money right away. Home equity loans typically come with closing costs, which can range from several hundred to a few $1,000s depending on the size of the loan and the lender. Next, we will explore the cash-out refinance option. With the cash-out refinance, you replace your current mortgage with a larger one, and the difference between the new mortgage amount and the remaining balance is given to you in cash. This option is particularly appealing if you have significant equity in your home, as you can access a large amount of cash by refinancing your mortgage. Cash-out refinances tend to offer lower interest rates than both HELOCs and home equity loans, especially if you are refinancing your primary mortgage. The big advantage here is that you are refinancing your entire mortgage, which could result in lower payments compared to a home equity loan or HELOC, especially if mortgage rates are low. However, closing costs on a cash-out refinance can be substantial, often higher than those of an HELOC or home equity loan, and it may take longer to process. Additionally, this option increases the balance of your mortgage, which means your monthly payments could rise significantly, and you could end up paying more interest over the life of the loan if you extend your mortgage term. Now that we've covered the basics of these three options, let's look at them in three different scenarios to help you determine which might be the best fit for your needs. Scenario 1. Home renovation. Imagine you are planning a home renovation project, and you need to borrow $50,000 to cover the costs. If you prefer flexibility in accessing the funds, a HELOC might be the best choice, especially if your project is ongoing and you want to borrow money in stages. With an HELOC, you only take out what you need when you need it, which allows you to avoid borrowing too much at once and paying interest on funds you don't use. However, keep in mind that if you have a variable interest rate, the cost of borrowing could rise over time. On the other hand, a home equity loan might be a good choice if you need the entire $50,000 up front. Since it comes with a fixed interest rate, you will know exactly how much your monthly payment will be throughout the life of the loan, making it easier to budget. This is great if your renovation project is large and you know exactly how much money you'll need. However, you will need to pay interest on the entire loan amount immediately, which might be overkill if you don't need the full $50,000 all at once. A cash-out refinance could also work for this scenario if you have a lot of equity in your home and want to take advantage of low mortgage rates. If you refinance your primary mortgage to access the $50,000, you could lock in a lower rate than a home equity loan or HELOC. But keep in mind that your mortgage payment could increase, and you will be paying the loan over a longer period of time. Scenario 2. Debt consolidation. In this case, let's say you have $50,000 in high-interest credit card debt and want to consolidate it into a single, lower-interest loan. A home equity loan might be a good option here since it offers a fixed interest rate, which makes it easier to plan your monthly budget and track how much you owe. By consolidating your debt into a home equity loan, you could save money on interest in the long run, especially if your current debts have high interest rates. A HELOC might also work well for debt consolidation if you need flexibility. Since you are only required to pay interest on what you borrow, you could keep your payments low in the early stages of the loan. However, if you don't pay off your debt during the draw period, your payments could rise significantly, especially if interest rates go up. A cash-out refinance might also be considered for debt consolidation if you have a significant amount of equity in your home. By refinancing your mortgage, you could pay off your existing mortgage and use the remaining cash to pay off your credit card debt. However, as with the home renovation scenario, this could result in a higher monthly mortgage payment, and you would be spreading your debt over a longer period of time. Scenario 3. Emergency expenses or unexpected opportunities. Finally, let's say you need quick access to cash for an emergency or an unexpected opportunity. In this case, a HELOC would be an ideal choice. Since you can borrow as needed and only pay interest on what you use, you can access funds quickly without taking on a large debt burden. However, you should be cautious of the variable interest rate, as it could lead to higher payments in the future.